Hi, everybody. My name is Michaela Beyer, and today I am going to be interviewing Jeff Drake, who is the frontman of the Joneses and also the guitarist of Amanda Jones and the Vice Principals. He has had a very interesting life. He served time in prison. He later went back to school and got a degree in history, and we are going to talk all about that today. And also, he just released a book, which is now available to purchase. The link is down below. Thank you so much for coming on, Jeff.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Good. Alrighty, so let's start from the very beginning. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Anaheim, California. When I was about 10 years old, my family moved to Irvine, California, and then about 13 to Merced, California. After I graduated high school in Merced, I moved back down to Los Angeles, and I've been back and forth between Los Angeles and Merced pretty much ever since.
Hmm. And what was your life like musically growing up? Was there any relative who really brought out the musical gift within you?
Well, nobody in my family played any musical instruments, but my dad grew up in the 50s. He was a teenager in the 50s, and he had a bunch of records from Chuck Berry, Bo Diddley, the Coasters, all the early rock and roll stuff. And that's what the music was around the house. That, and my mom liked the Beatles and stuff, but I gravitated towards my dad's 50s records. And so me and my brother, who's also a musician, um, we used to sing along to the Chuck Berry records and stand on the fireplace with the bellows, pretending it was a guitar.
Mhm.
And we were always listening to music.
Excellent. And I understand that you kind of became a major Rolling Stones fan very early in your years, in your
Yeah, I
childhood.
did. I've actually been, lucky enough to see him back in the 70s even. Um, I think when I must have been 13 or 14, my aunt bought me Exiles on Main Street for Christmas, and I loved it, especially side one. There was parts of it I didn't really understand, but just the way that record looked, and, the pictures and the music and everything. Actually, the first Rolling Stones record that I really remember buying when it came out was It's Only Rock and Roll. So I must have been about 13 years old. And I've been a huge fan ever since, although I haven't really listened to any of their records since Undercover.
Okay. And I'm wondering, you've talked in your book about how you weren't really all that into school during your high school years, but interestingly enough, when it came time for you to take the SAT, you actually got the highest score in your entire school.
That's correct. Actually, it was more than just the entire school, it was the entire part of the state of California. There's a lot of people in California. And I
Wow.
cheated on the test, which is amazing that I didn't get caught, number one, and that it didn't penalize me, because on the SAT, if you guessed wrong, they deduct they deduct points from you. If you leave it blank, you don't get any points. If you get it correctly, you get points. And I just filled in all the bubbles, and I got this huge score.
And you actually got a letter of congratulation from one of the men of history I most revere, Jimmy Carter. What was that like?
Jimmy Earl Carter, right? He was the president when I was in high school, and I was a National Merit Scholar because of my high SAT score. My GPA when I was a senior was 1.5, so I wasn't doing so well in school. But I got a letter from Jimmy Carter, and I got scholarship offers from everywhere. I got accepted at USC, and in my infinite wisdom, decided not to go to college.
Well, tell us about that decision and what you did instead of college.
Well, by the time I was a senior in high school, I was really sick of going to school. I'd had enough. I barely went as it was. My parents split up right before my senior year of school, and they both moved out of the house. So I was just kind of running wild. And the people at my high school couldn't believe that I didn't want to go to college because I was getting all these offers. And I really wanted to move back down to LA and get in a band, which is what I ended up doing.
Alrighty, and tell us about forming the earliest incarnation of the Joneses.
Okay. Um, Well, when I first moved down here, I almost immediately met my friend Steve Olson, who's a skateboarding hero. And we got in a couple of rockabilly bands together. That was sort of what we were into at the time, was rockabilly. And I kept getting kicked out. I don't know if it was because I wasn't any good or people didn't like me or whatever, but Steve kept getting me in these other bands. And I kept getting kicked out. So finally we said, well, maybe we should start our own band. and then they won't be able to kick me out. And we did. Me and Steve started the Joneses with Mitch Dean, and Ron Emery from TSOL was the original guitar player.
Hmm. And what were your ambitions for the band at that time? I mean, did you see yourself rising through the club scene, or did you automatically want to get the band to the point where you would sign a major deal?
It was really nothing like that, even close. This was in December of 1981, and the drummer Mitch had a job or something where he had a couple open dates at this place called the Barn at Alpine Village in Torrance, and they were opening for Missing Persons and the Dickies. It was Christmas Eve and Christmas night, I think, and he got us on the bill, directly supporting those two bands, and those were our first gigs. And we found out about it about 3 weeks before, so we all got together and started rehearsing. We wrote the whole set and practiced it in 3 weeks and got ready. And we were just doing it to do those two shows. We didn't have any intention really of keeping it going, but people liked it, and we just kept it going, and things sort of happened pretty fast.
Okay. And do you feel like you're able to sense intuitively what an audience really likes out of a band and whether or not a band has further promise? I mean, it kind of sounds like you were responding to good feedback.
You mean while you're doing it, while you're on stage?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely feel it. I mean, you get this sort of energy, from the audience if they're into you. If they're not, it makes it a lot harder. If people are just sort of wandering around, not paying attention, or sitting in the back, or talking. But no, from the very beginning, we got really good feedback. People, obviously were into what we were doing.
Hmm. And as far as your development as a songwriter, did you automatically know that you wanted to start writing your own material for the band?
Yeah, in fact, I started writing songs before I ever knew how to play guitar or anything else. I wrote probably my most well-known song is called Pillbox, and I wrote that in high school when I was about 16 years old.
Mhm.
I just knew enough on guitar to play the bar chords for the changes, and that was about it. And the reason why I ended up being the singer in the Joneses was because I was the one that was writing the songs, so I was the one that knew the words, and so I sang, and it was just supposed to be until we found a real singer, and we never did.
And I find that interesting. I mean, did you like did you eventually feel like you had confidence enough as a singer, or did you go through some singer auditions and just didn't find a great fit for what you wanted from this band?
No, we never really went through any auditions. At first, I was very unsure. I had never sung before, and so I didn't really know that I even could. And I was also kind of shy, and so it was hard for me to get up on stage to begin with. And so I would, get drunk or get loaded, to sort of build my confidence. And then once people started telling me that they liked it, I felt more comfortable, and it got easier. And then after a while, it seemed like we really couldn't change singers because I was sort of known as the singer, and people liked it.
Exactly. And especially considering the lineup changes, it's really good that you became essentially the face and the front man of the band.
Right, because I was the only one that stuck with it, right.
Well, and that was something that I was going to ask you about. Do you feel like overall having a lot of lineup changes kind of fed the creativity of the band, or do you feel like it was kind of a deterrent in getting the band to gel and progress to the next level?
It was definitely a handicap. There were so many personnel changes, and in like 1983 and 84, when the band was really getting big, was when we had the most personnel changes, and it was hard to develop new material and sort of progress, because as soon as we taught all the songs to one guy, somebody else would leave, and we'd have to start that process all over again. And yeah, it was tough changing people so often, but people would join and quit. And the Joneses were so popular at that point, they all sort of thought they could use it to go on to bigger and better things, and really very few of them actually did.
Yeah, I mean, one book that I read a couple of years ago about that same time period was Duff McKagan's memoir. I think it's called "It's So Easy and Other Lies." Have you read any memoirs from those days where you either think are worthy of mention or that you think accurately describe being in a band at that time?
To tell you the truth, I don't really read rock and roll books. I read history books.
Hmm.
Um, So I don't really know what to say about other people's memoirs. I don't read that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, anyway, Duff actually describes in his book kind of what it was like automatically having five members in Guns N' Roses that he totally gelled with and that he knew were committed to the band and they were all doing everything they could to make the band work. Do you feel like if the Joneses had had a dynamic like that automatically, then maybe they would have stayed, a lineup like that would have stayed together and developed for the long haul?
Yes, and because for I would say after about the first year or two, when the original band members left, I did everything. It seemed like, and everybody expected me to do everything, and so it wasn't like a band. Our manager Danny Sugarman used to say, "I need you guys to be like a fist," you know. It was never like that. It was always me, and then these other guys that were sort of, I felt like trying to cash in or whatever. Nobody wanted to do anything except lay around and get loaded and sort of cash in, and I guess that's why I was the one that sort of stuck with it. But yeah, I never felt like I had a band that was all together, and everybody wanted it as much as I did and was willing to actually get off their butt and work for it.
What was your sacred space? I mean, did you feel like when you were songwriting, that was really when you were at your most happy and zen when you were in the Joneses?
Not really, because when you're songwriting, most for me anyway, I was by myself. You know, I there's a few songs I collaborated with other guys in the band, but not very many.
Mm.
And I was usually by myself. Usually the you know on stage, I guess, is when I would feel the most, like you said, zen, sort of in my zone, sort of, or, um, but it wasn't even so much in the Joneses. It was more like when I was in Amanda Jones, when I was just playing guitar and singing backup vocals. That's where I felt most comfortable. I felt like that was sort of what I was meant to do. And I always felt like with me as the singer, people were kind of getting cheated because I'm not really a singer. So maybe if the Joneses had a real singer, it would have been better. But I felt more comfortable and home in the band Amanda Jones, and also, yeah, in Amanda Jones, not in the Vice Principals as much because my brother was in it, but in Amanda Jones.
Yeah, and I want to definitely talk about that later on. But with the Joneses for back to the Joneses for a second. You guys amassed a huge following in the Los Angeles club scene. I mean, you were one of the most popular and recognizable bands of that time. I'm kind of curious, like how you felt about that. I mean, did the band's rabid following give you a lot of confidence and a lot of drive to keep it going despite all the lineup changes?
Yeah, that was really, if it wouldn't have been for all the popularity, the band probably never would have survived. I mean, the only reason I kept it going like that was because things were moving ahead. You know, we had some momentum. And so, I kept the name. There was actually a point in the 90s when I tried to do something else, and none of the club owners would book me under a new name. They said, if you want to do it as the Joneses, we'll give you a headlining thing on a weekend, but if you want to do this other thing, we'll give you like the matinee slot on a Wednesday. And so I kept the name and kept the Joneses. And at the beginning, um, the first thing we put out was a couple songs on a compilation album called "Someone Got Their Head Kicked In Tonight," kind of a hardcore punk thing.
Yes.
And so the first tour that we did was promoting that, and we were actually more popular out of town than we were in LA until about 1983. When we came back from our second tour, that's when I moved from Orange County up to Hollywood. That's when things really started taking off in LA.
Okay. And eventually you recorded enough material for an album, Keeping Up with the Joneses. And
Right.
it's wonderful. I still think that
Well,
is such
thanks.
a strong release from that time period.
Thank you.
And and you got a great response from it on college radio on the East Coast,
Right, right.
particularly. And it looked like it was poised to break you guys into the mainstream, but describe what happened
Well,
right.
actually, leading up to that, I'll get to that, but leading up to that, we actually, that was in 1986. In 1984, we had the celebrity manager, Danny Sugarman, and Elektra Records was ready to sign us, and Danny wanted to have a bidding war instead. So he sort of put Elektra on hold and orchestrated this bidding war that fell apart. And so we wasted a lot of time doing that. And so we were still, probably uh, one or two of the biggest bands in LA at that time. But between 84 and 86, we really didn't do anything except just try to get this major deal that eluded us. And so we finally recorded in 86 because we knew we needed to get something out because bands like Guns N' Roses and Poison and LA Guns were starting to record and get deals. And we were afraid we were going to get passed by this scene that we sort of created. And that's why we did that record at that time. And then it didn't, and you asked me about, yeah, we got a bunch of good press, bunch of airplay on college radio, everything looked great. And then the record company, Dr. Dream, signed an exclusive distribution deal with a company called Green World. And about a week later, Green World went out of business. And there was this other label called Enigma that sued Green World because they owed them money. And Enigma claimed that they owned all Green World's assets, which included our record. And so our record got caught up in like this legal tug of war, and it wasn't actually released until 1987, a year later. So all the press, all the airplay, everything had been, a year before. And so when the record came out, it was kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not an afterthought, but anticlimactic, I guess is the best way to put it. And the band kind of broke up after that.
Yeah.
I retired. I was going to retire. I was 25 and decided I was going to retire.
Well, and unfortunately, you also developed an addiction to heroin and wound up serving time in prison.
That's right.
Yeah, and I mean, someone online actually wanted me to ask you. I think it was a fan of yours. What do you think of the like? I know that the charge you went to prison on was bank robbery,
Right.
but what do you think of the prison system having been part of it? I mean, do you think that it is in need of even more reform now than when you served time?
Yeah, I don't know what it's like now. It's been about 30 years since I was in prison. And
Mhm.
so I can tell you what it was like then. I haven't really kept up with what it's like now. But I expect in most ways it's worse now than it was then. It's overcrowded, way overcrowded. And they
And they had
keep
you work,
building.
and they
Go
had
ahead.
you working for like 11 cents an hour on certain jobs as well.
Right. Most of the inmates made 11 cents an hour. I got lucky because I was on the lobby crew, and one of my jobs was emptying the trash can in the warden's office. And so I got 70 cents an hour. So I was rich by prison standards. When we went to the commissary at the store, I was able to buy as many cigarettes as I wanted and stuff like that. While the other guys were, pinching pennies. But yeah, most of the guys made 11 cents an hour. Um, it was overcrowded. There's no rehabilitation. It's just sort of warehousing people. And they call it crime school because most guys come in like harder and more criminal than they went in because they learn from other criminals while they're in there. There's really nothing good about it. This country locks up more people than any other country in the world, and that includes Russia and China. I think there's about 2 million people that are locked up in this country right now. It's a shame. I call it the prison industrial system because it really feeds on itself. Now they have these for-profit prisons. Um, it's really sick. I think they're locking people up right and left, and I applaud the fact that Biden's letting people out for their marijuana offenses in the federal system. That's great,
Yeah.
but the war on drugs has just made America like the prison capital of the world.
Yeah, it's very tragic. And I mean, I'm assuming you're of the opinion that people who are on drug offenses besides marijuana as well should be given the option of rehabilitation rather than automatically sent to prison in most cases.
Yeah, and that wouldn't apply to me because I actually did commit a crime. Besides just being a drug addict, I'm actually a convicted felon. I actually committed a crime. I take responsibility for that. I don't blame it on the drugs. I mean, that was my situation, but the drugs didn't make me do it. I mean, it was because of my situation being a drug addict that I thought that was the thing to do. But yeah, I forgot where I was going with that. But yeah, it's if you haven't committed a crime, if you're just caught holding or some drug related crime, maybe some rehabilitation or something, but you don't just lock them up. There's guys in Texas that are doing life sentences for having one marijuana joint, and that's just not right.
No kidding. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as far as the prison thing goes, I mean, fortunately, you didn't have to serve much time. You got out, and by the time you got out, grunge had hit, and a lot of the Sunset Strip scene had kind of been swept away in that way.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Um, and when I was locked up, I actually got some fan mail and stuff when I was in prison, which lifted my spirits. And I sort of followed, what was going on with Nirvana and all that. I think what's his name?
Kurt Cobain.
Kurt Cobain, right? That guy. He killed himself right after I got out. That was all sort of happening right about then. And the one thing when I was in prison, I decided I was going to make it work for me. I wasn't going to like try to keep it a secret. It was hard to keep it a secret. It was sort of common knowledge what happened. But I figured I was going to make it work for me, and usually writers they wouldn't like it when you give them something to write about. I thought that would be something that would be good to write about. So I figured I would try to cash in on it. And there was no getting away from it. So I figured I would try to make it work for me as much as I could.
Yeah, and that's a good attitude to have about it as well. It shouldn't be some sort of shame that you have to hide or anything like that.
Yeah, thanks. And it seems like once people sort of serve their time and pay their debt to society, that they should have their rights restored. Be able to vote, own a gun, all the things that other people do. As long as you've served your time, I think that should be your punishment, not to be given the stink eye the rest of your life and turned down for jobs and all this. It's like I don't know. It's like they punish you your whole life.
Exactly. I feel exactly the same way. And I have a lot of friends who have had DUIs and it still haunts them a decade afterwards. And I'm
Right.
like,
Right.
I mean, I understand maybe having it on your record for a certain amount of time, but a decade later, it's just ridiculous. It's
Yeah,
horrible
and
how
it's
much it
especially
ruins.
bad with felonies, and especially if you've done time. When you're filling out job applications or resumes, and there's this gap. It's like, what's this gap in your history? What were you doing then? I was in prison, and not
It's,
everybody feels not everybody feels like they need to hire ex-convicts.
yeah. And I mean, I understand how hard it must be, and I really applaud you for being able to rise above that and come through it with flying colors.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Your cat's really cute, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I've got a lot of them. I've got a lot.
Really?
Yeah, my wife left me about 2 years ago, and she left me all her cats, and I've got 14 cats.
14. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
and I had more. I mean, I had one just pass away about a month ago, and another one a couple months before that. I think at one time she had about 30 cats, but yeah, now it's down to 14.
Well, I'm sorry your cat passed away a month ago, but my goodness, that sounds so cool. I think it sounds so cool living with that many cats, though.
They keep me company. I was really sad when my wife left. I was really lonely and stuff. And had it not been for the cats, I might have done something really goofy and stupid. But yeah, it's nice having them around. They cuddle with me. They keep me warm at night when I go to bed. It's cold up here, and they're just cool to have around. I like cats.
So let's get to Amanda Jones. You've
Okay,
said before that you think that Amanda Jones is actually the best band that you've been in. Can you
right.
tell me why you have that opinion?
Sure. Well, first of all, we had a singer who could really sing, and she was great to look at. I thought the band was a lot tighter than the Joneses. The Joneses were kind of loose and like the Stones and the Faces and sort of like that. Amanda Jones rehearsed all the time, and I thought the players were better. I felt more comfortable in my position in the band, playing guitar and singing backups. Um, I thought my songwriting and my guitar playing was the strongest. It's been maybe the guitar playing was a little bit better in the Vice Principals, but in the Amanda Jones, I was the only guitar player, so it was all me. Um, so yeah, I thought of all the bands I've been in, I thought that was the one that would probably make it if any of them did, and I was really surprised when we didn't. And yeah, I thought that was definitely the best band that I've been in.
Yeah, and
The
it
one I
kind of
was
came. Yeah, it came in the wake of a lot of other female-fronted bands that were succeeding. I mean, you've mentioned that an influence was Blondie, but this was right around when Hole was getting successful too, and
right, and
Garbage.
no doubt and
Yeah,
all
no
that stuff.
doubt.
Yep.
Yeah,
That was
and
part of the reason why we decided to do it. Me and Mandy had dated about 10 years prior, so we were friends. We knew each other from a long time before. And I saw her at the Coconut Teaser fronting a cover band. And like you said, that was in the mid 90s, right when all that girl power stuff was going on. And I thought that would be the perfect time to have a band like we had been talking about having. You're right. The time seemed right.
Yeah, and Mandy's an interesting figure as well because she was in the Lame Flames back in the '80s, and she was the inspiration for some popular music of that time. Like, of course, she was married to Duff McKagan of Guns N' Roses, and she was also dating Janie Lane of Warren at one point, and inspired some of their music. I mean, did you feel like what was she like as a performer? I mean, what made her so charismatic, and what attracted you to her as a performer?
Well, like I said, I dated her in about 1984. So I knew she was a great girl, very smart, very funny, great looking, very talented. She was very insecure though. We rehearsed for about, oh, I don't know, maybe close to a year before we ever played a show, just because she felt we weren't ready. She was kind of fearful, of actually going out and doing it in front of people and having people make judgments, I guess. And she had nothing to worry about. We were so good. The first gig that we played, Greg Shaw from Bump came up to us afterwards and said he wanted to do a record after our first show.
Yeah.
So, but she was great to work with. She's real smart and real funny. So we collaborated on a lot of our songs. She's got some great sort of rock and roll sensibilities. She likes cool stuff. It was great being in a band with her. I'm still in touch with her. We're still good friends.
What was it like working with a woman after that time? I mean, your collaborators in the Joneses had been primarily men. I mean, did it feel like you and Mandy had a really good energy together? Whether it was because you knew her before as a friend and someone that you had dated, just what was your dynamic like?
We did have a really good chemistry. There was like a lot of sparks between me and Mandy because we were sort of we didn't really rekindle because we never got back together. But working together that much, we were together a lot and shared a lot of stuff and we collaborated on a lot of the lyrics. Well, like I said, we dated about 10 years prior, so there was a good chemistry between us. We found we had kind of similar senses of humor and we liked the same kind of music and all that kind of stuff. So it was easy to collaborate with her. She's really smart, really funny. She wrote a lot of the lyrics and Amanda Jones. I wrote some of the lyrics, and it was a real challenge because I had only in the past written songs for myself. I had never really written songs for anybody else. And to write songs for a female vocalist was even harder. To write songs from like a female point of view. I couldn't really pretend to know what it's like to be a female, but I had to write a little differently than I was writing for myself. And there was actually a couple songs that I wrote for Amanda Jones that were played by the Joneses and actually recorded by the Vice Principals. That kind of got left over, and my brother ended up singing Mandy's part.
Nice. Yep, sounds like it was a fruitful partnership. I'm sorry that it didn't last longer than a few years.
Yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun. I really thought that band was going to do something, go somewhere, and we did do a EP with Bomp, but I got strung out again, had to go to rehab, and by the time I got back, it kind of all the momentum was gone, and it just it was it was over.
Yeah. And eventually you started the Vice Principals with your brother. What was that like?
Well, me and my brother were kind of estranged at that time, and originally I wanted to do a solo record, and so I was gathering people to be on the solo record. I wanted to have all my friends be on it, and I kind of wanted to bury the hatchet with my brother. And so I had the idea of recording a song that he did in one of his prior bands, the Suicide Kings. And I approached him about, me doing the song and him singing backups on it or something. And he said, "Yeah, that sounds great. Instead of doing that, why don't we just do a band together?" And I thought about it for a minute. And I thought, he was in the Humpers, who were a pretty popular band in the 90s. And so I took me and one of the guys from the Joneses and my brother and one of the other Humpers and then Chris, the drummer, and we did that. And everything was great at first. I had a plan sort of laid out about how we were going to do it, and everything was great up until the time we recorded, and then that's sort of where my plan ended. And then it was time to make a new plan, and my brother Scott didn't want to make a plan. He just kind of wanted to uh, sort of follow the current where it took us, to sort of let nature take its course. I was of the other opinion that if you plan to fail, you fail to plan. And So after the first record, kind of me and my brother realized we couldn't collaborate because we were both used to sort of being the boss. And we used to tell people the reason we broke up was because there was too much genius for one band. And in a way, that's true because yeah, we're both real stubborn and sort of set in our ways. And he didn't like what I was contributing, and I wasn't real happy with the direction he was going, and it just kind of fell apart.
Mm. Have you and your brother been able to reconcile in recent years, though?
Oh yeah, yeah, that was 20 years ago. Since then, we've gotten closer again.
Good. Alrighty. And after that, you decided to pursue an education again, and eventually you got a degree in history. Tell me what that was like after having been in music for so long.
Well, yeah, after the vice principals, after I quit the vice principals, um, that's when I moved up here for the first time after high school. I decided I wanted to go back to school because my day job at that time, I was regional sales manager, regional sales manager for the third largest nail polish manufacturer in the world called Orly. And I got laid off 3 days after 9/11. And I thought, I should probably go back to school and get some kind of degree and get like a real career that I can't be laid off and blah, blah, blah. And so I went back to college, moved up here, went back to college because I knew it would be, or went to college because I knew it was cheap to live up here and I was familiar and had friends. And I found going back to school, I was a lot more into it than I was when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, I was more about getting stoned and ditching school and hanging out. And I took school a lot more seriously when I went back. I was about 40 years old. And I got my AA at Merced College, and then I transferred down to Cal State LA, and I got my BA there. And then shortly after that, I met my soon-to-be wife, and we moved up here and got married, and that takes us about to now, really.
Mhm.
I was married for 10 years and didn't really do anything musically except um, Todd Youth, the guy that was in D Generation, and a couple other bands and Chelsea Smiles got a hold of me, and he was always a big fan. Chelsea Smiles recorded Pillbox, and asked me if I would, do a round of shows with him as guitar player. So we did that, and then the next year we did it with Paul Mars, and did a big show with this band called Tiger Army in Southern California about 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago now. And but that's really all the musical stuff I've done until I started writing this book about it.
I mean, do you have any plans or ambitions to record music again or to perform live again?
I don't know. Actually, last year, Pleasant Gaiman and myself were talking. You just recently interviewed her. She's been a friend of mine for a long, long time, and we'd always talked about doing an album of duets, me and her, like country songs mostly. And we did some Zoom rehearsals, and we're just about to start organizing the recording. And I forget what happened. She got really busy with one of her books or something, and we sort of put it on hold. um, I haven't really made any plans to perform. Yeah, I'm 60 years old now, and I kind of feel like with performing musically, it's kind of like with baseball players. It's good to quit before they tell you that you should. I'd rather. And plus, with the especially with the Joneses, it was kind of like teenage music that I wrote when I was a teenager, and I don't know. I don't really see myself doing a lot of performing in the future, but that could easily change
Okay, well, you
if
should
the
definitely finish the project with Pleasant. That would be so cool. I love the sound of that.
yeah, and the rehearsals we were doing, the songs we were picking were really cool, and I think we're going to do it someday. If both of us can. Now I'm busy doing like the book and stuff, and we might do it next year or something. We'll see. We're still in touch all the time. I just got a text from her right before we started doing this because I sent her a book and she was all excited. So we're still in touch all the time.
Excellent. And she was an early champion of your band as well. I've read some of the stuff that she wrote about you guys in her column.
She was. Yeah, I met Pleasant right after our second tour in 1983. She was doing the Screaming Sirens, and we became fast friends. And we would run around together and go to parties and stuff. And she would write about us in La Di Da and review our records under sort of nom de plume, so people didn't know it was always her. And yeah, she really helped with getting people to come out and see the band.
Yeah. And she was actually handpicked by Courtney Love to write an article about herself and Kurt Cobain after they had gotten into trouble with Department of Children's Services.
I didn't know that, but Pleasant's a very talented writer, and she's written, I think, 9 books now. And before that, she was doing, her Colin and Lottie Daw and different things. And that doesn't surprise me. I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, she's wonderful. I love Pleasant. I'm actually going to go to her show tomorrow as well.
Oh, really? She's
Yeah,
great. Yeah, I love Pleasant. Like I said, we've been friends for about 40 years, and we support everything in that each of us do. It's great.
excellent. So, what made you make the decision that you were going to write a book?
Oh, good question. Um, well, there's this guy, my friend Jeff Davis, who put out the Joneses Anita Fixed record back in the 90s. For about 30 years, he's been pressuring me to write a book. Ever since I got out of prison, he's been, oh, Jeff, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. And I was like, no, I don't want to write a book. It's like, I don't have the kind of discipline for that. It's like, I write songs. It takes about 20 minutes. This book took me a couple months. And I said, if somebody wants to write a book about me, I'll help them, but I don't want to write a book about myself. That just seems it's not really my style. And then my wife left me about 2 years ago, about right now. And Jeff said, well, now's the time, Jeff. You got all this time on your hands. You can't just sit around being depressed. You got to do something. Why don't you write the book? And I said, okay, I'm gonna write the book. And I did. And at first it was really hard going. I wrote about a page a week. I spent about an hour a week on it. And I thought, at this rate, I'm never going to finish. And so after a couple months of that, I decided I was going to write every day for as long as I could stand it. And that's what I did. And I started getting into it. And I would write till my back hurt, and the crazy thing about the way I write is I didn't there was no first draft, there was no revision or anything. There was no note taking or research. It was just I sat down and started typing at the beginning and went through to the end, and I broke it up into chapters later. And I was my own editor. I didn't have a ghostwriter. I did it all myself.
Right. So it was kind of a Kerouac style memoir.
I guess I don't really consider myself a beat, but it was almost stream of consciousness. I mean, every day before I started, I would sit there for an hour and think about where I was in the story and what was going on, and try to place it all in my mind chronologically, and then I would just pound it out.
And did you feel like it was therapeutic for you and that it gave you a great perspective on the kind of life that you've lived?
It definitely did. It was therapeutic in the way, like I said, my wife had just left me, and I needed to get out of myself and not just sit around being depressed. And it did that, and also it made me realize all a lot of stuff that I had accomplished, and not everybody in the world has people trying to pressure them to write books. I'm lucky that people would be interested to read something that I wrote and find out about my life and all that. So I feel blessed in that way, that people are even interested, that people even care. Um, and I'm lucky that I had the opportunity to do it at the time. And Pleasant was very supportive. I asked her advice and stuff, and she pushed me to do it. Said, you got to do it. You're so funny and you're so smart. And if you write the way you talk, it'll be great. And that's what I tried to do. I tried to write it in kind of a conversational style, the way I talk.
And it's very engaging. You did a wonderful job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I
Well,
was somebody who didn't know a ton about the Joneses going into it. And I was completely just I was completely motivated once I read the first page. It was so funny in parts and it was very descriptive. I'm a little surprised to hear that you're a first time writer. It
yeah.
seems like you really know what you're doing.
Well, the only thing I've written besides songs is when I was at Cal State LA, I used to have to write historical research papers,
Hmm.
which is something very different. It's all footnotes and sources, and it's a completely different animal. But those would be 60 or 70 pages long. And I thought that was just interminable. Like I would lock myself in my room for a weekend and just pound it out. But this ended up being 287 pages or something. And I was surprised that I was able to put that much together, but I feel really good about it now. It's like I wasn't sure, and I feel like I did okay.
Yeah, you did wonderfully.
Oh, thanks.
Alrighty. And one thing that going back to your days on the Sunset Strip, one thing that I was curious about was what you thought of some of the bands that have come to define that era. I mean, I know that originally the members of Guns N' Roses were actually trying to get on the bill for Jones's shows that you were
Right.
fronting, and then they wound up becoming the one of the most,
Biggest band in the world. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, what did you think of them then, and what do you think of them in retrospect?
Well, I knew them before they were even Guns N' Roses. For a while in 1983, I was living and working at Nikki Beats' studio in over by Dodger Stadium,
Hmm.
and they used to come and rehearse as Hollywood Rose and LA Guns, and I couldn't stand them. I thought Axl sounded like Janis Joplin or something, and they were just so heavy and not really what I like. I'm not really a heavy metal kind of guy,
Hmm.
and so yeah, when the Joneses were getting popular, they would come to all of our shows, and we would score drugs for them. And they used to call Johnny Nation, our guitar player, all the time, begging to be put on these shows with us. And I would tell him, no, I don't want these guys on our bill. They're not the right kind of music, and they're going to pull some kind of stunt, and it's not going to be good. And then one night we were playing at Raji's, this club on Hollywood Boulevard, and we were doing an encore or something, and Axel and Izzy jumped on stage and started singing along into one of the microphones, and uninvited, and nobody knew who they were. I mean, maybe some of their friends were there, but they weren't Guns N' Roses yet. They were just these two slime bags. And I got really pissed off. And so I told Johnny, do not let these guys on a bill with us. I was really mad. And he actually did at the show at the Troubadour. And what do you know? They brought out these topless dancers and stuff. And I just thought that was really Bush League. It's like, come on, if your music's not good enough to just leave the topless dancers at home, don't, especially don't bring them to our show. But then they blew up, and they became huge. And I still can't stand to listen to them. Um, I think it's great for them, I guess, that they became so huge. I'm kind of glad it didn't happen to me now. I'm not sure I could have handled it. Uh, but I don't know. I just I wish they would give us the credit that's due, because they sort of changed. Although they do claim that they were influenced by Henry Rocks, which is sort of a similar kind of thing. But I wish they would tell the real story. When Slash wrote his book, somebody showed me he made a mention of the Joneses, and he called us an obscure glam band. And I thought he could have been a little bit more I don't know, something than that.
Well, I'll say this about Slash's book. Like, Slash has released a book, so has Duff, and so has Steven Adler. And even though there are parts of Slash's book that I like, he's very open about the fact that he did not write it. He hired somebody to ghostwrite it for him. And
Okay.
even though it's got like some of his shtick in it, I don't consider it a genuine memoir of the Sunset Strip. Just if you're gonna just write notes and give them to someone else, inevitably there are going to be inaccuracies, and there are going to be things in that book that just don't, it's not an authentic representation of the era, let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think if you remember in the book, there's a scene where I went to the Guns N' Roses after party after their big and slammed the door in my face. So that might have been one of the notes that he passed to his ghostwriter was, call this band an obscure glam band, because he sure didn't want to give us any credit. That's for sure.
Well, it's a shame. And honestly, I mean, as much as I love Guns N' Roses, they're kind of a mess as far as like releasing material that properly depicts their past. And they didn't include any interviews with Izzy or Gilby or
Izzy,
anyone.
Izzy was the coolest one. And in my mind back then, it was Izzy's band. I mean, he was the one with the cool taste in music. He's the one that looked cool. He was the nice guy. I always thought it was his band. I was really shocked when he quit, but I wasn't surprised what they turned into after he quit, because I thought he was the one thing that sort of gave them hope to be cool. And then when he quit, it was all over for me. I mean, I never liked him anyway, but I always liked Izzy. um, I thought he was the decent one in the band.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely desperate to interview him. I would love to get him to open up. I mean, I think that it's been 25 years now since he's been interviewed on camera.
Oh
So
my gosh. Well, if I knew him, I would nudge him and tell him to do it, but he probably wouldn't remember who I was. I don't know.
I don't know about that, but thank you anyway. I appreciate that.
Oh, sure.
Alrighty. So What are your plans for the future? I mean, are there any other ambitions or goals that you have going forward?
Well, I guess I better write another book. That's sort of what people are telling me is, yeah, what's the next one going to be about, Jeff? And in some ways, I kind of feel like I shot my wad with this one because okay, well, I wrote about my whole life, but since I've finished it, I've remembered, oh yeah, I should have written about that, and I keep remembering all this stuff, and so maybe there'll be a part two. I need to get on it though because I started writing this one in January of 2021, and I really started writing seriously in April of 2020, and it's just coming out now. So there's a big lag time from between the writing of it and the manufacture and it actually coming to life. So yeah, I need to get started on my next one.
You know,
Have any
Jeff,
ideas?
I do actually.
Oh,
And
okay.
yeah, we can edit this out later if you want. But I think that given how you were such a champion of Mandy and you played so well with her and Amanda Jones, I think that you writing a book about the women of the Sunset Strip would be really interesting. Like
Ah,
maybe you could do like the top 10 women of the Sunset Strip. Like you could write an article about Pleasant and an article about Mandy
Iris.
and Iris, exactly. Like
It's
and
all good friends of mine.
yeah,
People
and
used to think me and Iris were brother and sister
really?
because we both used to wear those sort of military caps and black hair and blue eyes, and yeah, people thought we were brother and sister. I still call her sis when I talk to her.
Aw. I'd like to find a picture of you guys so I can use it as part of the promo.
Of me and Iris,
Of you and Iris or of you and Pleasant too.
I don't think I have a picture of either one of them. Pleasant has a good picture of me and her at the Screaming Siren record release party. I gathered all the photos I had up and put them in the book, and I can't think of any with Pleasant or Iris, which is crazy considering how long I've known them.
Mm. Well, one thing that I do a lot is peruse other websites to see what content I can find from that time. So if I find anything of the Joneses with the two of them, or of just you um, with any other people of that time, I'll definitely send them your way.
That would be great because I had so few. I didn't realize how many pictures they would need for this book, and I thought I had a lot. And but I kind of self-edited. I didn't send them crappy photos where I was having a bad hair day or something,
Mhm.
and I had to put a thing on. Oh, I've got this horrible story. I'll tell you. I had to put a thing on Facebook requesting people to send me photos because I had so few. But this girl that I knew back in the mid '80s responded to that and said, "Oh, I've got this great picture of us from back then. I'll send it to you." And she sent it to me. It's actually on page 38 of the book. She's a girl with wild blonde hair, and the guys at Hosek really liked it, and they decided to use it for the book. And so I contacted her and said, "Hey, they decided to use your picture." And so we chatted a little bit, and I asked her how she was doing. She said she was having some health problems. And I said, well, when the book's out, I'll send you a signed copy. And she was all excited and stuff. And then she started posting stuff on Facebook about that she had cancer and she was having these treatments and stuff. And she died last weekend, right before the book came out. And her dad contacted me and said, oh, she was so excited about getting the signed copy of the book. And there's no way I could have gotten it to her any sooner because she actually died on Saturday and I got the books on Tuesday,
Oh my
and
goodness.
it was just too late.
Well, I'm
Really
really sorry.
sad, really, really sad.
No kidding. I'm sorry to hear that. That's
Yeah,
it's horrible for her. But
yeah. Well,
um,
she's not in pain anymore. She's doing better now. She's with God. So
okay. Well, I'm glad that you guys reconnected before she passed away, though. And
yeah, me too. And I'm glad. I mean, the pictures, I mean, it's such a minor thing compared to her life, but yeah, now she's like memorialized in my book with a picture. And, I sent her dad a signed copy and stuff so he could see the picture. And it was really sad. It was really sad.
all right, well, you've done her a great honor by including those in your book.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Alrighty. So anything else that you wanted to add?
Um, 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 um. I can't really think of anything. This has been a lot of fun. You've asked some really good questions.
Thank you. Yeah, and you've given great answers. I can tell that your friends are really, really going to enjoy this. And it was such a gift having the book as well, because sometimes there's very little personal or professional information on certain people, and you have to do a
Right.
lot of digging. But just having the book there was wonderful. It was like having a little Bible to go by.
Now you know everything about me.
Exactly. And again, I appreciate what an authentic, true memoir it is, because like we were talking about before with Slash's book, I can kind of, it's easy to spot a fake now in these celebrity memoirs that are being
Uh-huh.
released. And I really appreciate it when people take the time to put their own voice on paper and to record their own memories as opposed to shoving it at someone else, you know?
Well, thanks. I asked the guys at Hozak, the publisher of my book. I noticed that they do a lot of books written by musicians, and every one of them was, say, Paul Collins was some other guy, or Mark Belfer and some other guy. And mine was the only one that wasn't with a professional writer helping them out. And I asked them, "Is that going to be a problem?" They said, "Oh no, that's good. That's okay." And if people have asked me, "Well, who's your editor?" They say, "I did that myself." So yeah, that makes me feel good because I wouldn't say it's 100% me because they did all the visual stuff and put it all together, and they did a lot. But as far as the content, it was all me. Yeah.
Excellent. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And if you ever come to the LA area, I'd love to, get a drink or something and talk. And I'll get the interview posted within a couple of days.
Great. I'm sure I will. I'm starting actually in a couple of weeks. I'm going to start doing some signings and readings of the book. I'm going to be doing Fresno and then Merced. And then I think after the first of the year, I'm going to come in down to LA and do something with Pleasant in Hollywood and Orange County. And yeah, we can get together then.
Excellent, excellent. And again, people will love having you down here for a reading and signing. Just Pleasant had a great response at hers. I went to the one at Wacko's that she did, which is such a cool store. Just
Yeah,
I
I
have a
can't wait.
total yeah, I have a total nerdgasm whenever I go into Wacko's. It's one of my favorite places on the planet.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that place been around for a long time, but yeah, I can't wait. It's been a long time since I've been down there, probably since before the COVID. Since my wife left, I've pretty much just been hiding out in my house, and now I'm ready to bust out and promote the book and make some appearances and get with the people again.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thank you, Michaela.